On today's episode of History in a Minute, what was the most embarrassing Roman defeat? Hey everybody, it's Mr. Phillip Campbell with Homeschool Connections History in a Minute. I am your bearded, nerdy history guru. The ancient Romans certainly have a reputation for military prowess, but they did have their share of military defeats as well. Whether we consider their catastrophic losses to Hannibal during the Second Punic War at battles like Cannae and Lake Trasimene, or under the reign of Augustus when the Roman legions were ambushed and destroyed by the Germans in the Teutoburg Forest, or towards the end of the Roman Empire in the year 378 when the entire Roman army was annihilated by the Goths at the Battle of Adrianople. So they certainly had their defeats as well. But looking over all these military setbacks of the Romans, which one was the most embarrassing, the most humiliating defeat for ancient Rome? Well, that would likely be the Battle of the Caudine Forks in 321 BC during the Second Samnite War. And what makes the Battle of the Caudine Forks so interesting and embarrassing from the Roman perspective is that despite the name, there was no actual battle. That is, an entire Roman army was defeated without a single stroke being laid. How did this happen? Well, the Samnite leader Gaius Pontius, through a ruse, had tricked the Roman army into marching through a narrow defile known as the Caudine Forks. This was a narrow pass through the mountains where there was only one way in on one side and one way out on the other. And as the Romans were marching through the pass, when they got to the exit, they found that it had been barricaded against them. They turned around to go back out the way they came and found the entire Samnite army waiting for them at the opening. And so they were completely trapped in this defile. Realizing their folly and the danger, the Roman army began to despair. And the Samnites themselves weren't sure what to do with the Roman army. They didn't want to kill all of them or enslave the entire army. They certainly didn't want to let them go. In the end, they opted to humiliate them by making the entire army, starting with the consuls and commanders, pass under a yoke. That is, they set up a ox yoke that you would yoke oxen with, and they made the entire Roman army strip down to their undergarments, lay down their weapons, and they had to pass underneath the yoke on their way out of the Caudine Forks, signifying their subjection to the Samnites. Now, this was so humiliating, so embarrassing to the Romans that after it was over, they just threw themselves down on the roadside, weeping with humiliation, and despaired that they would ever be able to show their faces again in their homes because of how humiliating this was. Now, what the Roman historian Livy tells us is that when Rome and its allies found out about what happened, they graciously sent the humiliated army fresh clothes, new weapons, horses, so they could return home in honor. Then the Romans went on to defeat the Samnites, conquer all of Italy, overrun the Mediterranean, and become the Roman Empire. So we know how this story ends. But still, the Caudine Forks has to take rank as one of the Roman army's most humiliating defeats in its long history. If you enjoy the sort of content we cover here on History in a Minute, I encourage you to peruse the rest of the videos on the channel, subscribe, and always remember, history is awesome.